Another year means another Super Bowl champion. And like last year, this year it was all about the Kansas City Chiefs. Welcome back, or welcome to America's Sports. We're going to take a little dive into the Kansas City Chiefs 2023 season, highlighting all the best moments of their year. So let's get right into it. The Kansas City Chiefs won the Super Bowl last year, heading into this season beating the Philadelphia Eagles in Super Bowl 57. So naturally, that puts a target on their backs, but this is something that Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs were used to. The Chiefs did lose guys like Orlando Brown Jr., Juju Smith-Schuster, and Ronald Jones II on offense from the 2022 Super Bowl team. Then on defense, they lost guys like Frank Clark to the Broncos, Thornhill went to the Browns, Saunders went to the Saints, and then Dunlap was not signed. They also lost their backup quarterback Chad Henne due to retirement, so they had to make some additions, and a lot of them came from the Bucs, like their new backup Blaine Gabbert, safety Mike Edwards, and offensive lineman Donovan Smith. Perhaps their biggest pickups overall, though, was tackle Jawan Taylor, Drew Tranquill, linebacker for the Chargers, and Charles Omenihu, defensive end from the Niners. The 2023 draft was in Kansas City, where they would go on to pick guys like Anudike Uzomah at pick 31, Rice at pick 55, and Morris at pick 92. After that, the fun of defending their Super Bowl title begins. On September 11th, Chris Jones agrees to another year, and tight end Travis Kelce would be back also for Week 2. The Week 2 matchup this year was a divisional round rematch from the year before in the playoffs. So the Chiefs would look to get right on the season, and that they did. After losing to the Lions in Week 1, they would go on to win 6 straight. And during this 6-game win streak, they would outscore their opponents 158-84. They were looking like those defending champs, but now with an even better defense. All the way up until their worst game of the year, for sure, and it was Week 8 against Denver. They were in Denver, and this was their 3rd division game in a row, 3 weeks straight of AFC West football. The very next week, they head to Germany to play against the Miami Dolphins, who at the time were 6-2, the same record as Kansas City, so this was a big game, but it was business as usual for Kansas City. The Chiefs, in typical fashion, would make history as they became the first NFL team to win in England, Mexico, Germany, and in the US. I saw that and said, of course they did. But what happens after this and after the bye week is what's really important to me, because that's what stopped them from getting the 1 seed, and that's what started people to have their doubts with them going back to the Super Bowl this year. But for the most part, everyone thought that the Chiefs were still in contention for the Super Bowl until this rough patch hit. And this is the point where they kind of threw everyone off. In weeks 11 through 14, they would lose 3 out of their 4 games, losing to Philly, Green Bay, and Buffalo, which all 3 turned out to be very good teams, but nobody was used to Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, and company losing 3 out of 4. And meanwhile, on the flip side, you had teams like the Ravens, Buffalo, and the 49ers starting to get really hot. After week 14, the Chiefs were 8-5 and the Broncos ended up being 7-6. Denver was really the only team in the division that was capable of taking the division from them at this point. But they knew that if they just buckled down and won these games, that they would win the division and would get at least 1 home game throughout the playoffs. So the Chiefs do exactly that. They go out and win 3 of their last 4 games, and where week 18 didn't even matter. They had already wrapped up the division, and the Broncos had also started losing. They would win the division yet again. This would be their 8th division in a row. You have to go all the way back to the Denver Broncos 2015 season. They were the last team to win this division. And to be honest, I know Vegas and the Chargers, Broncos are obviously doing everything that they can, but I don't know when another team is going to stop the Chiefs from winning the division. So yeah, they've got Patrick Mahomes, they've got Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, they got Mecole Hardman back, and one of the most underrated running backs, Isaiah Pacheco. But what really did it for them this season was the defense. This was the 2nd best defense and arguably the best defense all year, although I do give the nod to the Ravens. This coaching staff is brilliant, and one of the most brilliant there is the defensive coordinator, Steve Spagnuolo. So, no matter what the seed, no matter what the record, it's going to be hard to take this Chiefs team out in the playoffs. You're going to have to play your best ball to do it. As we saw it play out in this year's playoffs. Alright, here's where it gets silly. Chiefs finish 11-6 and they get the 3 seed, where they will be facing off against the Miami Dolphins, who got the 6. The Dolphins' last 2 weeks of the regular season really changed things up for them, because they were at the top of the AFC standings for most of the year until they lost the last 2 games. The Chiefs and the Dolphins would make headlines again, as this was the 4th coldest game in NFL history, and that did not bode well for the Miami Dolphins. Chiefs won this one 26-7, and the defense was amazing. They held Raheem Mostert to just 33 rushing yards, and they also held Tua under 200 passing yards. On the offensive side, Rashee Rice and Isaiah Pacheco were amazing. And now the Chiefs would begin their first on-the-road experience with Mahomes in the playoffs, going to Buffalo for the divisional rounds next weekend. Alright, here it is. This is what the Bills fans and the players have wanted. The Chiefs at home in Buffalo. From here on out, the Chiefs would no longer be favorites, according to odds makers. The Bills played the Chiefs well again, they just happened to come up short again. This was a 27-24 loss. Josh Allen played as good a football as you can against this Kansas City defense for the most part. He threw 1 touchdown and ran for 2. He also had no interceptions and was not sacked 1 time. On the offensive side of the ball for Kansas City, Pacheco was great again, with Pacheco with 97 rushing yards and a touchdown, Travis Kelce with 2 touchdowns and 75 receiving yards. Yep, that's right, the Kansas City Chiefs are back at another AFC Championship game. They've been in all the AFC Championship games since 2018. That alone is insanely dominant. Speaking of dominant, they will be playing in Baltimore against the Ravens. The Ravens were 13-4 overall in the regular season, and they clobbered the Houston Texans in the divisional round a week before. The Ravens did have more total yards than the Chiefs, but the Chiefs beat the Ravens in the turnovers and in the sack game, which is something that the Ravens had done to other teams all season long. Kelce looked possessed out there. Lamar Jackson threw for 272 passing yards and still held the Ravens to 10 points. The Ravens only had 81 yards on the ground, which is an amazing feat for the Chiefs defense. The Ravens also kind of got either rattled or just really frustrated at the end. They were not doing themselves any favors. I believe this was the worst game that the Ravens played all season long. And with that said, you know what this means. The Chiefs are going back to the Super Bowl. Let's take a look at how it went down. Super Bowl 58 was in Las Vegas this year, but the Chiefs are familiar with playing in Vegas as their division rivals, the Raiders, play there. They will be facing the San Francisco 49ers on February 11th, 2024, and again, they would go in as underdogs. The Chiefs rallied from a 10-3 deficit at halftime, and this was one of Mahomes' better games of the year, in my opinion. They were able to take the 49ers into overtime and take it in overtime. There was a blocked extra point when the 49ers scored a touchdown that probably changed everything. Just like that, the Kansas City Chiefs were back-to-back champions and turned into a dynasty. They're the first team to go back-to-back since New England Patriots. One of the craziest things about this Chiefs dynasty, by all accounts of their standards, this was a very down year for them in scoring. Imagine if you take that defense, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, you know the drill, and they all of a sudden turn into a great offense. And Mahomes is already talking about going for the three-peat, as they would be the first to be able to accomplish that. No bullshit. I think they should absolutely be considered the favorites going into next year, and I thought that they should have been this year as well. Since Tom Brady left, Cincinnati is the only team that's been able to knock them off in their playoff runs. So while the Buffaloes and the Baltimores and even the Cincinnatis are really good teams, until you knock these guys off in the playoffs, they will be the favorites. And as Patrick Mahomes said, the Chiefs are never the underdogs. At least, not in this era. Congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs, and you'll see me in the next one.